The scent of disinfectant had become the fragrance of my life. Every morning, I stepped into Seoul Central Hospital before the sun rose, tying my mask, fixing my ID badge, and pretending I wasn't just another broken thing hiding behind a clean uniform. I'm Woo Rim, 25 years old, a nurse, and an Omega whose body had long betrayed him. The doctor said my heat cycle had gone irregular because of stress and hormonal imbalance. They said it might never stabilize unless I was marked, permanently, by an alpha. It was supposed to sound like medicine, like biology, but to me it sounded like a sentence. Who would ever want to mark a defective Omega like me? Still, I worked hard. I smiled at my patients, listened to their stories, and pretended I wasn't quietly fading. That morning, I didn't expect anything extraordinary to happen. But then he arrived. The automatic glass doors slid open, and every nurse in the lobby froze. The man who stepped in carried an aura that made even the air hesitate. Min Jin, the ruthless CEO of MJ Corporation. I'd seen him once in a newspaper article. Tall, sharp eyes, the kind of man who looked like he could crush empires with a single word. But standing in the fluorescent light of our hospital, he was even more intimidating in person. Dark tailored suit, black hair slicked back, and eyes so piercing they made my chest tighten. But it wasn't him who first caught my attention. It was the little girl clinging to his hand. "Appa, hurry," she said, tugging at his sleeve. "It hurts here." Her voice cracked, and I immediately crouched down to her level. "Sweetheart, where does it hurt?" I asked gently. Her big brown eyes met mine, and for a moment something shifted in the air. Her expression lit up as if she had seen the sky for the first time. "Appa," she shouted, pointing straight at me. "Appa. That's my Appa." The entire lobby went silent. Min Jin stiffened. His gaze darted between me and his daughter, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry," he said flatly to me, though his tone was more defensive than apologetic. "She's been feverish since last night. She's confused." But the little girl only clung tighter to my coat. "No, I'm not wrong. That's my Appa." He smiled just like in my dream. Her voice trembled, but it wasn't from fever, it was joy. Something in her belief made me hesitate. I smiled softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay," I whispered. "You can hold my hand until the doctor sees you, all right?" She nodded eagerly, her small fingers gripping mine. For some reason, her touch burned into me, gentle but electric, as if my whole body had been waiting for this moment. And when I looked up, Min Jin was staring straight at me. His eyes, cold and distant seconds ago, now softened just a fraction. Like he too couldn't understand why his daughter was suddenly smiling again after so long. Later that day, after her examination, I learned her name was Yena, 5 years old. She had a mild immune disorder that required frequent treatment, and apparently she hadn't smiled in months. Until today. "Mr. Min," I said carefully when he came to check on her, "Yena just needs rest and the prescribed medication. She'll recover soon." He nodded curtly, but his gaze lingered on me longer than it should have. "Thank you, Nurse Worim," he said in a voice low enough that only I could hear. "You've done something even her specialists couldn't." I looked down. "I just did my job, sir." "Maybe." His eyes flickered toward the window, where Yena was laughing quietly as she colored in her notebook. Or maybe it's something else. That evening, when I was packing up to go home, I found Yena sitting alone in the waiting area. "Yena, where's your father?" I asked. She looked up at me with wide eyes. "He's talking on the phone again. He's always busy." Her voice softened. "Can I sit with you until he's done?" I hesitated, then smiled. "Of course." She leaned against me, small and warm, and I realized just how lonely she must have been. After a moment, she whispered, "Appa, will you come home with me?" My heart skipped. Before I could answer, Min Jin's deep voice echoed from the hall. "Yena," he said, walking toward us, "don't bother." He stopped mid-sentence. Yena was curled against me, half asleep, smiling peacefully. And I was holding her hand without even realizing it. Something unspoken passed between us. For the first time, I saw something human in the CEO's eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or longing. "Sorry," I said quickly, pulling away. "She must have been tired." He nodded slowly. "She hasn't slept that soundly in weeks." The next day, Min Jin returned, with no appointment. Yena ran straight into my arms the moment she saw me, shouting, "Appa, you came." This time, Min Jin didn't correct her. He watched us for a long time, then finally said, "I'd like to request you as her regular nurse. If possible." "Me?" I blinked. "I'm only assigned to pediatrics on rotation, sir. I don't." "I'll make it possible," he interrupted, tone firm. There was no arrogance in his voice, only resolve. Something told me this wasn't about convenience. It was about me. Days turned into weeks. Yena's health improved rapidly under my care, and her laughter began to fill the hospital halls. Every time she saw me, she would shout, "Appa," and Min Jean would simply smile faintly, shaking his head but never correcting her again. Sometimes I caught him watching us, that same unreadable look in his eyes. Once, while walking Yena to her car, our hands brushed. It was accidental. Yet the spark that shot through me was impossible to ignore. I glanced up, startled, and found his gaze fixed on me. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "For what?" I whispered. "For wanting to touch you again." The words burned into my ears. I froze, heartbeat stuttering. He realized what he'd said and looked away quickly, clearing his throat. "I mean," he started, but I shook my head. He held. "It's okay," I said softly, though my voice trembled, because deep down, I wanted it too. That night I couldn't sleep. Every memory of him, the way his voice softened when he spoke to Yena, the rare smile he gave me in the corridor, came flooding back. And for the first time in years, my body ached in a way that had nothing to do with illness. I woke up feverish the next morning, my scent glands aching. My dysfunctional heat was flaring, erratic, painful, cruel. Dr. Han, my supervisor, frowned after checking my vitals. "Worm, this is getting worse. You need to take time off." "I can't," I said weakly. "Yena's still under my care." Dr. Han sighed. "You can't keep ignoring this. The only way your cycle will normalize is if an alpha marks you. Permanently." The word hung heavy in the air. Permanent. I thought of Min Jin's face, his calm eyes, his low voice, and my chest tightened with guilt and longing. No, someone like him would never mark someone like me. That afternoon, Yena came for her last checkup. She was fully recovered, healthy, laughing. And when Min Jin thanked me for everything, I smiled even though my heart hurt. "Yena's a strong girl," I said, kneeling to hug her. "Keep smiling for your dad, okay?" She nodded, then looked between the two of us mischievously. "Then, Appa should come home too. Right, Daddy?" Min Jin blinked, startled, and I nearly choked. "Yena?" But she only grinned. "Daddy, I like both my Appas. Can't you both come home?" Her innocent voice echoed in the hallway, making a few nurses giggle nearby. I hid my burning face behind my clipboard. Min Jin's voice dropped low. "Maybe, she's not the only one who wants that." I looked up, and for the first time saw emotion in his eyes, raw and unguarded. I swallowed hard. "Min Jin SSI." He took a step closer, close enough that I could feel his scent, sharp, clean, and unmistakably alpha. He leaned in slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. "You make her smile. You make me feel alive again." My breath caught. And then, before I could stop myself, I whispered, "You shouldn't say that." "Why not?" he asked, his gaze falling to my lips. "Because you'll run away?" I hesitated. "Because I'm afraid I won't." His eyes darkened. The air between us thickened, warm, dangerous, tender. His hand rose, brushing against my cheek. I didn't move. Our faces were inches apart. Then, slowly, his lips touched mine. Soft, hesitant, full of restrained longing. The kind of kiss that said everything words couldn't. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were breathing unsteadily. His forehead rested against mine and he whispered, "Tell me to stop and I will." I couldn't, because I didn't want him to. But somewhere deep inside, the fear still lingered, of my broken body, of being marked, of being left behind when he learned how flawed I really was. So I stepped back, whispering, "Please, don't make promises you can't keep." His expression softened, sadness flickering in his eyes. "Then I'll prove I can," he said quietly. And for the first time I realized, maybe Min Jin wasn't as ruthless as the world believed. Maybe he was just a man trying to find warmth again. And I, a broken Omega, might just be the one he'd chosen to find it with. The days after Min Jin's kiss felt unreal. I still felt the warmth of his lips whenever I closed my eyes, but at the same time reality pressed in from all sides. The smell of antiseptic, the soft hum of monitors, the long corridors that had always been my sanctuary and my cage. I told myself it meant nothing. He had acted on emotion, nothing more. A man like Min Jin would never look twice at someone like me, a nurse with a defective body and a borrowed smile. And yet, every morning he returned. He brought coffee for the entire ward the first time, pretending it was for the staff's hard work. But everyone knew whom his eyes were searching for. "Wormissai," he said, standing by the counter holding 2 cups. "Yena wanted you to have this." "Ah, thank you." I took it carefully. "She's not with you today?" "She's with her tutor." He hesitated. "But I wanted to see how you were doing." I almost dropped the cup. "Me?" "Yes. You looked pale last time." His concern wrapped around me more tightly than his tone intended. I tried to laugh it off. Just tired. Hospital life. His brows knitted. You're lying. My throat closed up. Excuse me? I can tell, he said quietly. You're always smiling, but your eyes look like you're waiting for something to hurt. The words hit too close. I looked away. Please, Mr. Min, you shouldn't say things like that. Then tell me how to stop thinking about you, he replied so low that only I heard. The steady beeping of the monitors suddenly sounded like a heartbeat. What? That evening my condition worsened. The irregular heat returned without warning, a sharp ache blooming from the base of my neck, waves of warmth I couldn't suppress. I barely made it to the staff room before collapsing against the lockers, breathing unevenly. Not now, I thought. Not here. But the scent of distress pheromones must have escaped, because minutes later the door opened. Warim? Minjin. He must have been nearby. I turned away quickly. Go, please. It's not safe for you to be here. He froze when he understood. You're in heat. An episode, I gasped. It's dysfunctional. It'll pass. Dysfunctional? His voice softened. You're shaking. I'll be fine, I said, pressing my forehead to the cool metal. Just, don't come closer. But he did. Slowly, carefully, like approaching a frightened animal. His hand hovered near my shoulder, never quite touching. Warim, look at me. When I finally did, the world blurred. His scent was calm, cedar and rain, grounding me instead of overwhelming me. Breathe, he murmured. You're safe. And somehow the pain eased. He stayed with me until the fever broke, saying nothing, just offering silent presence. When it was over, I slumped against him, exhausted. I told you not to see me like this, I whispered. It's embarrassing. You think being human is embarrassing? He asked. I tried to move away, but he caught my wrist gently. I read your file, he admitted. Dr. Han told me about your condition. I froze. He shouldn't have. I asked because I was worried. His thumb brushed my pulse. You suffer alone, don't you? I bit my lip hard enough to taste iron. It's my problem. He held, his eyes darkened. Not anymore. For the next few weeks, Min Jin found excuses to appear, bringing Yena, checking on donors, sponsoring pediatric wings. Every time our gazes met. Every time my chest betrayed me. Yena began calling me Appa in public now, and he didn't stop her. Sometimes he even smiled, small and secret, when she did. One afternoon, Yena insisted on painting with me in the playroom. She pressed my hand into hers, smearing color on both our palms. See? Now we match. Min Jin watched from the doorway, leaning against the frame. When our eyes met, something unspoken passed between us. A picture of something that could have been family. Later, when Yena was taken home by the nanny, he lingered behind. You look good with her, he said quietly. She's easy to love. So are you. The words were simple, but they made my breath hitch. I looked down at my stained fingers. Don't say things that sound like forever. Why not? Because forever doesn't happen for people like me. He stepped closer until I could see the reflection of my trembling self in his eyes. Then let me prove it can. That evening, rain lashed against the hospital windows. My shift ended late and I found him waiting outside, holding an umbrella large enough for two. You'll catch cold, he said. You didn't have to come. I wanted to. We walked in silence down the quiet street. The city lights blurred through the rain, painting him in silver and shadow. At the intersection, I turned to thank him, but he reached out and brushed a wet strand of hair from my face. Warim, he said softly. Do you still think I'm here because of gratitude? I couldn't answer. I've been alone for years, he continued. I thought work was enough. Then you appeared, and suddenly nothing felt enough without you. His voice cracked a little, and it made him real, not the CEO the world feared, but a man who was finally learning to want. I whispered, I'm scared. I know. His hand slid down, resting against my jaw, gentle, asking. Then let me be the one to make you feel safe again. When he leaned in, the kiss was different this time, warmer, certain, full of rain and breath and promise. I clutched his sleeve, afraid the moment would dissolve like mist. After that night, something changed between us. He began sending small things. Lunch boxes, handwritten notes tucked inside Yena's medical folder. Well, rest. I'm thinking of you. And I began to believe him. But my body still betrayed me. The episodes returned, shorter but sharper, each one leaving me weaker. Dr. Han grew sterner. Warim, your body's asking for something, you keep denying it. A permanent mark might stabilize your system, if it's someone you trust. Someone I trust. My mind immediately pictured Min Jin's face. But I was terrified. What if he marked me and regretted it? What if he found out how broken I really was? That night, I stood on the rooftop terrace, cold wind in my hair, lost in thought. I didn't notice him approach until his coat settled around my shoulders. "You shouldn't be out here," he said. "It's freezing." Maybe I needed the cold. He stood beside me in silence for a while. Then, quietly, "Dr. Han told me everything." I stiffened. He had no right. "I asked him because I'm desperate," Minjin admitted. "You're suffering and I can't watch anymore." He turned to face me, eyes full of conflict and tenderness. "I'll mark you," he said, voice trembling slightly. "Not because I want to own you, but because I can't breathe when you're in pain." I stepped back. "Don't say that. You don't even know what that means." "It means I've fallen in love with you." The words hung between us, fragile and bright. I felt my throat close. "You'll regret this." "I haven't regretted a single thing since the day Yena called you Appa." Rain began to fall again, soft at first, then steady. He took my hand, pressing it against his chest where his heartbeat thundered. "Do you feel that? It's yours if you'll let it be." Something inside me cracked open, years of fear, of shame, of loneliness, flooding out like light through glass. I stepped forward. Our foreheads touched. "I'm not perfect," I whispered. He smiled faintly. "Neither am I. That's why we fit." And when he kissed me again, the world faded. The rain, the city, the ache, leaving only warmth and the quiet certainty that maybe, just maybe, my broken body had finally found the rhythm it had been missing. I used to think love was like a fever, something that burned fast and left nothing but ashes. But with Minjin it was slower, steadier. It sank into me like warmth after years of winter. He still came to the hospital every few days under the excuse of checking Yena's follow-up. Everyone in the ward had started whispering. The CEO and the nurse. That Omega from pediatrics, the one who caught Minjin's eye. I pretended not to hear, but gossip in a hospital spreads faster than infection. One afternoon, as I walked through the corridor with a tray of files, 2 interns passed by and whispered, "Do you think he really likes him, or is it just pity?" Their words hit harder than I wanted to admit. I ducked into the supply room to catch my breath, clutching the files against my chest. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was just someone convenient, someone Yena liked, someone easy to approach. He held the door open quietly. "Wurim?" "Minjin." He closed the door behind him and leaned lightly against it, frowning. "You've been avoiding me all day." "I've been working," I said too quickly. He took a step closer. "Working doesn't usually involve running away when I walk in." His tone wasn't angry, it was wounded. And that somehow hurt more. I sighed. "People are talking, Minjin SSI. About us. So let them." "I can't. You have a company to protect. A name. And my voice faltered. "I'm just a nurse with a broken cycle." He looked at me for a long moment, then slowly closed the distance between us. "Wurim," he said, voice low, "the world can say whatever it wants. I only care what you say." His hand brushed mine, fingers lacing gently. "Do you regret the night on the rooftop?" I shook my head before I could stop myself. "No." "Then don't run." He drew me closer until I could feel his heartbeat against my chest. "You're not my scandal," he whispered. "You're my reason to stay human." My breath trembled. "You shouldn't say things like that. Then kiss me and tell me I'm wrong." His words left no room for air. When his lips touched mine, the noise of the world disappeared. Just rain outside the small window and the sound of us breathing. He kissed me softly at first, then deeper, until the edge between fear and need blurred. When we finally broke apart, I was shaking, but not from fear this time. He rested his forehead against mine. "I meant what I said that night," he whispered. "Let me mark you. Not because I want to possess you, but because I want you to live without pain." My throat closed. "I'm scared it'll change everything." "It will," he said gently. "But only for the better." A few days later I collapsed during rounds. The heat episode hit hard and sudden, dropping me to my knees near the nurse's station. Voices blurred. Someone called for Dr. Han. Through the haze I heard another voice, deep, desperate. "Move." Minjin. He wasn't supposed to be there, but somehow he was, kneeling beside me, his hand trembling as he held mine. "Wurim, look at me," he said. "Breathe. You're safe." My vision swam. You shouldn't see me like this." He pressed his forehead to mine, ignoring the staff who tried to pull him back. "Then close your eyes," he murmured. "Just listen to my voice." I did. And the chaos faded until there was only his heartbeat. Later, when I woke in the recovery room, he was still there, sleeves rolled up, his expensive jacket tossed over the chair. Yena was curled beside him, sleeping peacefully against his shoulder. He looked up when I stirred. "You scared me," he said, voice hoarse. I told you I'd be fine, I murmured. You weren't fine. His jaw clenched. Dr. Han said if it keeps happening, your body might. He stopped, biting the words back. I tried to smile. Guess I'm stubborn. He reached for my hand. Then let me be stubborn too. Let me keep you alive. The weight of his sincerity made my chest ache. Over the next week, he refused to leave my side. He worked from the hospital lounge, brought Yenna every evening, even learned how to make tea from the old receptionist just to bring me a cup himself. Everyone whispered more, but for once I didn't care. One night, when the ward was quiet and Yenna had gone home, he came to my room again. The only light came from the city skyline through the window. He sat at the edge of my bed, silent for a while. Then, softly, you know, when Yenna first saw you, I thought it was coincidence. But now I think she felt something I was too blind to see. I turned toward him. And what's that? That you were meant to be part of our lives. He reached out, brushing his thumb along my cheekbone, lingering there as if afraid I'd vanish. Worm, I love you. And I'm asking again, not as an alpha, not as a CEO, but as a man who can't imagine his days without you. Let me mark you. The words filled the room like a heartbeat. I felt tears sting my eyes, from fear, from longing, from the sudden possibility of hope. I'm not perfect, I whispered. My body might fail again. Then we'll face it together, he said simply. That's what families do. Families? The word tasted unfamiliar yet right. He smiled faintly. Yenna already thinks you're ours. Maybe she's just ahead of us. That made me laugh softly through the tears. He leaned in, wiping one away with his thumb. May I? He asked, a whisper against the silence. I nodded. He kissed me again, slow, reverent, almost trembling. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. Not tonight, he said softly. When you're ready. When you want it. That's when I'll mark you. The promise settled deep in my chest, not a command but a vow. And for the first time in years I didn't feel broken. I felt chosen. In the days that followed, my strength slowly returned. The staff began to see us differently, not gossip but a quiet truth they couldn't ignore. Yenna spent every weekend drawing the three of us together, stick figures with smiling faces and hearts floating above our heads. One morning she handed me a drawing with bold crayon letters. My Appa's and me. Min Jin chuckled softly when he saw it. She's more decisive than either of us. I smiled, slipping the drawing into my bag. She might be right. His eyes softened. Then maybe it's time we stop running from what we already are. He took my hand in front of everyone, no hesitation, no secrecy. For a moment, the hospital fell silent. Then life went on as if the world had quietly accepted something inevitable. And I realized as his fingers tightened around mine, that this was what healing looked like. Not the absence of pain but the courage to let someone stay when it hurts. Autumn came quietly that year. The air outside the hospital smelled of rain and ginkgo leaves, and the city finally felt slower, softer. My body had healed enough that Dr. Han cleared me for light duty. He smiled when he handed me the file. Your vitals have been stable for weeks. Seems someone has been taking better care of you than the hospital ever could. I laughed, flushing. I guess so. Because I knew who he met. Min Jin had been patient, so unbearably patient. Every evening he still brought dinner, sometimes Yenna's drawings, sometimes only silence and a smile that said he didn't need anything else. He never pushed. He simply stayed. And every time I looked at him, the fear that once filled me began to fade. I started to imagine things I'd never dared before. Breakfasts without rush, small laughter echoing through hallways, Yenna's crayons scattered across our table. A life that wasn't borrowed or temporary. But one question still burned inside me. Could I really let him mark me? Not as a cure, not as obligation, but as love. The answer came one night in the simplest way. We were at the park behind the hospital, Yenna chasing leaves in her tiny red boots. Min Jin and I sat on a bench watching her spin in circles until she collapsed in giggles. She's laughing again, I said softly. She hasn't stopped since she met you, he replied. His voice was calm, but when I turned, his eyes held that same quiet storm I'd seen on the rooftop months ago. Hope and fear and devotion tangled together. Worim, he said, you don't have to decide for my sake. But if you ever choose me, I'll spend the rest of my life proving you were right to. I looked at him for a long moment, then at Yenna, her cheeks flushed, her laughter free. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of the future. I was afraid of wasting it. So I reached for his hand. The next evening, after Yenna fell asleep in her hospital room during a follow-up stay, we stood alone on the rooftop again. The city lights shimmered below us and the night air was cool against my skin. I used to hate this place, I said quietly. It always smelled like endings. He moved closer. And now it smells like you. That made him laugh softly and the sound warmed the chill air. I took a breath. Minjin, I'm ready. His expression changed. First surprise, then a tremor of emotion that made his voice catch. Are you sure? I nodded. Not because I need saving. Because I finally want to live. He stepped forward slowly, almost reverently, until his arms were around me. We stood there, hearts pressed together, the city murmuring below. Then he drew back just enough to look into my eyes. May I? He whispered. Yes. He bent his head and pressed a kiss to the side of my neck. Not claiming, not consuming, just a promise. A soft warmth spread through me, steady and calm, like sunlight seeping into places that had been cold for too long. It wasn't magic. It was faith, his in me and mine in him. When he pulled back, I could barely speak, but the trembling in my hands was gone. For the first time, my heartbeat felt steady. The next morning, Dr. Han confirmed what we already knew. My heat cycle had stabilized. Normal. Balanced. He looked astonished. What happened? I smiled. I guess I finally stopped running from myself. Outside the room, Yenna waited with a drawing she'd made overnight. 3 figures holding hands under a big yellow sun. Across the top she'd written in uneven letters, Family. She handed it to Minjin, then looked up at both of us. Appas, can we go home now? Minjin laughed, a full, unguarded laugh I'd never heard before. He lifted her into his arms, then reached out a hand to me. Come on, Nurse Wurim, he said. Your patients are waiting. Who? I teased. He smiled. Me and Yenna. For the rest of our lives. That evening, as we walked out of the hospital together for the first time, not patient and nurse, not CEO and subordinate, but something whole, I realized what the mark truly meant. It wasn't a claim on my skin. It was a vow in my heart. I had spent years believing I was broken, that I needed to be fixed. But all I'd ever needed was to be seen and loved, exactly as I was. Minjin reached down and laced his fingers with mine, Yenna swinging between us, her laughter scattering into the twilight. And just like that, the world felt simple again. Not perfect, but finally completely ours.